after you recording, because I don't want to take up so much of your tape.
Okay, the day you went out.
I had already gone out and surveyed the mango trees. I decided I wanted to paint a mango bunch, but I couldn't find any cluster that on the tree, like the lemons. Now on the lemons I found I found the coconuts together, but I couldn't find this sort of thing. So I asked the manager of the farm to ask one of the men to go up the tree and get me a bunch. So he went up the tree and came back laughing, and he was all bloody. He's gotten himself up there somehow, and I guess he skinned himself getting down or up, I don't know. And he ran in there so happy he had this bunch. And I hung them up on the porch on a nail and did them in the attitude of growing. This painting makes me happy when I see it, because I got all those greens in there. And I knew the Puerto Rican mango has a yellowish meat to it. And I think I got some feeling of that glow below, even though it's not underpainted or anything, and threw it against the sky. In and out of the gate to the farm, I would see these lemons, and this tree was loaded, and they were ripe, and I kept looking at them. So I asked the manager one day, I said, "Doesn't anybody drink lemonade around here?" And he said to me, "These people like limes, they don't like lemons." And he said they only use the lemons for scrub water, for bleaching their floors. They put it in the water and scrub the floors with it. And I said, "Look, please let the lady bring me some lemonade. Please let the cook bring me some lemonade." Every day after that I had lemonade, fresh made squeezed lemonade. So that's my tribute to the lemons that grow in Puerto Rico, and they don't make lemonade with them. I also watch the workers pass my little guest house each day, and they took a path past the place where this was growing. And one day, like a flash, one of the workers took his trusty machete and wiped its head off and took it home for dinner. Took my growing pineapple home for dinner. And this is my ode to the pineapple. Okay. You know, the trumpet vine, a vine that was growing at Pendle Hill, and I painted the whole campus in 47 of the buildings and surroundings, train stations, trolley stations, and all that sort of thing. But I just had the summer of 48 and 49. Now, I can't, for the life of me, decide whether I took this, painted this 48 or 49, but it doesn't matter, here's the painting. And this I sold to one of our colleagues at Talladega College, Margaret Montgomery, and in her will She is deceased now. She willed the painting back to me. So at the present time, it's in the Clark collection or estate. Trumpet line.
Oh, okay.
You get sort of washed out for me, but maybe not for you. Okay. This is one of the boys' dormitories at Talladega College. I don't believe it's there now. I think it, but in 1949, 50, somewhere in that period, I painted this on the campus. It's Stone Hall. The men lived in this. I don't think it was a particular frat group, but fraternity group, but it was a very popular men's dormitory, Stone Hall, Talladega College. I was assistant professor of art there. I set up the art department. This is a boat that's closer to home near the Caribbean, called Boats on the Bayou. It's a second version of one that I did in 1952, if I recall. The attempt here was, of course, to make a more poetic approach to it. And I had a painting under this one that I had decided to cover, to paint over and put another texture on. And the impressionistic feeling you get here that you see when I did this in 1961 was done the same year that I did Black Orchid in 1961. I had a pretty good summer that year painting for an exhibit in San Francisco. So the broken color you see there is sort of a scumbled effect going over the underpainting, and where I didn't attempt to fill in the areas that broke through. So that's why you get the effect of this painting. I intended to be high key, and that's what you're getting there. I like the painting.
Okay. Battery's almost out. I said the battery's almost out. We have another one upstairs, but then.
What are you doing, finishing up one?
Yeah, it's this battery is just about finished. Okay.
All right, if you've done what you can do. This is Puerto Rico again, and this is called House in the Valley. That's a little house in Puerto Rico. I named it House in the Valley. And as I walked along the road up above, I looked down and I saw these youngsters playing in and out of the window. No glass in any of the windows, they were open. These were houses that some of the people with a little more money could afford, not like the workers' house you saw or might have seen earlier. These kids evidently went to school because they were learning to speak English, but they would yell up to me something in English, and I would answer them, and I realized that we weren't communicating because they didn't understand my answers, and they really didn't understand what they were yelling in English. So they got a big kick out of my English, and finally scrambled out of the house and came up on the bank where I was looking down at them, and started digging into my paint box, asking me what a particular color was. And I would tell them what it was in English, and they'd tell me what it was in Spanish. So we got a little English-Spanish game going, and I think they enjoyed that. And I went on with my painting. I was able to quiet them down and go ahead. You can see how the house is painted and is built. Just simple slabs, boards, and a corrugated tin roof. And the suggestion of the tropical foliage around. This house may not be as tall as most of them. Most of the houses are at least 6 feet off the ground, up on poles, so that the animals can go under, maybe stay under there, and people can walk under the houses, going to a shortcut to wherever they're going. And it's an easy thing for the house to sway back and forth in a hurricane or earthquake that are pretty frequent in the Puerto Rican island. This was 1950, quite a little while ago. So things have changed much since then. Okay. Notice how much these look like the mangoes if you saw those earlier, but they're much larger. And this is called breadfruit, and it's really the bread of the island, and in many tropical places, where if they have breadfruit, they won't really go absolutely hungry. My observation was that the breadfruit grew continuously, I think about 5 years continuously. This was growing right outside of the guest house where I was living, and I ate breadfruit quite a bit. It's something like a potato. It's a starchy kind of fruit, and I didn't mind it at all. Under that green skin is a starchy kind of material. The rain was coming down pretty well just before I did this, or maybe even while I was doing it, but this is what I came up with, right on the spot, there, sitting on my little porch in Puerto Rico. Are you ready now?
Yes.
This is a suggestion of a battlefield during World War II. I came across a record of something that had just been published of what was happening on the battlefield around 1940. I forget what year, but I painted this in 1946. And the reason I did it really was because so many of our black soldiers were being mutilated. One had his eyes put out. 2 families were murdered in Macon, Georgia, I believe it was. So things were happening that you realize they were not getting any credit for the valor on the battlefield. So I thought I would do a reminder. And I have a medic here who is putting a dressing on a leg, and you can obviously tell whose leg it is. And the other soldiers back there with another patient, another wounded under fire, and the cover of the kind of planes they had at the time flying overhead. Not the latest equipment by far. This is about 50 years ago, 60 years. Thank you. I call this one Nude in the Classroom. And this was a model I remember pretty well from 1938 or about. And here we are in the classroom. I happen to get a pretty good spot near the model in this case, but I lived so far out in the sticks that by the time I got into town, I was already late for class. They didn't clock us in or anything, but all the students who lived nearby or in dormitories were already there, and they had the best spaces around the model. So I was lucky here, and I see some of the students, and a couple of them I could almost name. The one over the shoulders of the model in back, I can't think of her name at the moment, but she went on to be a teacher, and that didn't take, so she became an occupational therapist later, but I don't know what she's doing now. Olga Davis, that was her name. Now, in front of the model, the fellow with the blue shirt, that's Joe Amore. He was from the Italian section of South Philadelphia. So he was one of the slightly older students, I think about 27 years of age. I was just about 20. I was a neophyte compared to him. So this is all I have to say about the moving the classroom. But what I was doing was violating a main principle. The other students were drawing in charcoal, but I got as much mileage out of my paints as I could possibly get because I was preparing my own paints, and I wanted to practice as much as possible. They called me, some of the students called me a filthy modernist. Now, my things don't look at all modern today, but according to that school, since they were trying to get the finest draftsmanship, I was doing something they weren't doing. The Ashanti Carver was painted in 1977, and I had long since started putting the date on the front of the painting. Sometimes I wanted to know what it was out front, and certainly sometimes the buyer or the observer. When I was taking some advanced course in art, it was bad to see the date on the front painting because sometimes the historian would drum up little quizzes to make a curve in his marking, and he was glad to paint the date wasn't there because he would try to make you even pin it down to the season of the year, whether it was springtime or summer or whatever. So I'm not looking at quizzing anybody. It's just the date that I put on since 1961. The Carver is making the only stool that I know of that the Ashantis make, the rectangular stool. I don't want to confuse you. It's not the only one because there's a stool for every status of Ashanti, from the Ashantahini on down to the lowliest child born in a household. So this man, you don't know where the stool is going yet, but pretty soon it would turn into something for maybe a nobleman or some other person in the Ashanti group. Now this, I took a lot of the photographs that I used in my pictures because going at the pace he's going, I couldn't possibly have gotten here. This happens not to be one of my records. I can't buy this by somebody else's record. But I actually saw this on several occasions where the carver sat in front of a big pile of rectangular box, and he would just select one, and of course he could see where he was going. He saw his image in the block before he got there. And notice the chips I tried to get with the paint. This is all done with the knife, and I tried to get the feeling of the chips that had fallen off. And even though the model had long trousers on, I thought I wanted a little bit more of a repetition of the dark color, and so I bared one leg that had a trouser leg on it. Okay, this is my shiny carver. Sign on that at all?
No.
Okay, this is a houseboat on the Sacramento River. Is that the Sacramento or American? Okay,
sounds right.
Sacramento? Okay. In Sacramento, not too far from the capital. I went down there with a small group of students I had in a private class, and I did this in one afternoon, and we were welcomed by the owner of the boat because he welcomed us because he didn't like the kids that came around, because the kids would throw at him and he would chase them, and they just felt he was a grumpy old man. But what happened, he sort of retreated from the world around the early 1920s and went down on his boat. I think when early TV came in, the only trip to the city he would make would be maybe a beer parlor or someplace where they had TV, and they might have a Joe Louis fight. He'd go down to see that. But other than that, he stayed on his boat with the cats that he had living around him. And I think my little houseboat came off pretty well. And it's one of the paintings that I've always liked for what I managed to get. And it reminded me, in a sense, of a boat done with a similar color scheme by Monet in some of his early work. I wasn't trying to copy Monet, I was trying to get the mood of what I saw there. Reflection in the water. And in general, taking the color I had on my palette and trying to adjust it to what I saw in the water. Okay.
Yes. I think it could have been the American River, because you said when he came to town, as though the town was far away.
I think it was the American River. But somebody can correct that. Watercolor sketch that I did in 1944 for a painting that was called Freedom Morning. I named it after a symphonic poem by Mark Blitzstein, American composer. It's one of the few sketches I made for the large canvas that's in the Apex Museum in Atlanta, Georgia, at the present time. The large one has more figures in it and has a bigger story to tell, but I was just fiddling around trying to find out how I would take a couple of spirituals that the composer used and get them suggested in a thing that would suggest during the Second World War the freedom of the American people. And since we were on the bottom of the totem pole as far as the citizens of America were concerned, I felt we would start with the black soldiers, since this man was among he was a captain. Blitzstein was a captain in the black troop in England at the time when he wrote this, and Lord Beaverbrook suggested that he write a tribute to the black troops. This is just a sketch.
Really?
I was working in the print shop on the WPA when I did this, but it was done on my own time. Our supervisor had suggested that we do something to pay attention to the war effort, because America was sorely caught unprepared when the attack came at Pearl Harbor. And so I went out to some of the trade schools, one school in Philadelphia in particular, where they were drafting and doing other things to come up with some kind of training so they could turn some of this into a national war effort. It's called the same group getting ready for the war in the simple print shops, the simple what do you call trade schools, in the trade schools, and he's drilling a piece of.
He says it's a drill press.
Yeah.
What's the date?
This is 1941, I think. It was after Pearl Harbor, 41, 42. I didn't say that. That's true. These workers you've been seeing, 1941, 42. You can look in back of that, and also, I don't know what I call this. Just two men and a machine, you can call it. This is another in the same group, 1941, and this is called cutting the sheet. This is called soldering. Soldering number 2. They were taking all kinds of positions to solder some of this metal they were using, or some of these practice pieces they were working on. And I have number 1 is another one where the flame is sort of shooting out. I tried to dramatize these things, even though they were away from the scene when I painted them. I made sketches on the spot.
Oh, these are real life scenes then?
No. These are scenes, things that I saw them doing in the shop.
Okay.
They were young men, most of them.
Mm-hmm.
Teenage boys in many cases.
But these aren't done for photographs. These are done from drawings.
No, these are done from sketches that I made. Right there by going and sketching them.
And the oils are sort of like sketches.
Yeah, they're close to it.
Okay. Go ahead.
What you wanted?
The background.
Some of the background in these paintings is the surface of the shellac board or varnished board that I painted on. It's not oil. Got it? Here are two men and a milling machine, and this was painted in 1940, 41, in that period, in the same group of the workers before the war. Now, remember, these are early pieces done just before the World War. America hadn't entered the war yet, but had been attacked at Pearl Harbor and was getting ready for war. Or let's put it this way, it was in between the year and the attack at Pearl Harbor. Because we had 1 year for conscription, where they were training men, and then with the attack came the declaration of war. And certainly they had to get into full gear, but we were getting ready before Pearl Harbor because I think Roosevelt sensed that this was coming.
He knew it was coming.
He knew
That's
it
it.
was
Yeah,
coming.
he knew it was coming.
He knew it was coming. So with conscription,
Mhm.
our supervisor told us to go out and see what they were doing to get ready.
Right.
Here we had two men working around a drill press. Now, I don't know whether two men would operate this thing or not, but I believe in the situation that I saw, there were two people sort of buzzing around this thing. But some worker came to the apartment where I was living in Philadelphia, and he went to the room where I was painting this and crawled out of a window to pick something on the roof. And as he went out, he made a statement. He said, that's not the way you use a drill press. You never have two people around it. So I don't know what the real use of a drill press was, because using it on metal was not a thing that I did in my training.